Alright, I'm going to spend the next few minutes recapping what I consider to be the top 12 best songs that Bob Dylan has ever written. Before I do this, I'm going to just talk for just a second about my introduction to Bob Dylan's music. Growing up as a kid, I remember riding around in the car with my mom and my brother, and she would have the oldies station on. And there were 3 Bob Dylan songs on this particular oldies station's playlist that I can recall. There was Like a Rolling Stone, Positively 4th Street, and Lay Lady Lay. So as a kid, those are my first introductions to Bob Dylan. And I have to say, none of those songs at the time really made much of an impression on me. It wasn't until, I guess I was 16, NBC did a mini-series called The 1960s. And it ran for 3 or 4 nights. And it was, pretty big deal. It was advertised as being this kind of great production that captured, the spirit of the 1960s and kind of showed what that time period was really like. And I didn't watch this miniseries, but I do remember just flipping through the channels one night, and I caught just a couple minutes of it. And the couple minutes that I happened to be flipping by showed Mr. Tambourine Man by Bob Dylan, the original acoustic version. I'd heard the Byrds version before, the electric version, and enjoyed it, but there was something about Bob Dylan's version that just grabbed me. And I remember just kind of pausing and thinking, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my entire life. It was one of those moments where you have to just kind of stop and take it in because it's just such an impressive thing you're hearing. So not long after that, I went to the store and I got Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 1. That was released in 1967. Now this was around the time that I had started learning how to play the guitar. And the thing that stood out to me about Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits, especially the acoustic songs in the first part of the album, it just seemed so simple. And I was thinking, man, I could do this. Like I could do what he's doing. And his voice, wasn't pretty, it wasn't polished, it was very raw. And again, I was thinking, I could sound like this. Like it just, there was an accessibility to Bob Dylan's music that makes a kid like me who's just learning how to play guitar feel like, if this guy can do it, I can do it. So that was my entry into Bob Dylan's music. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start looking at the top 12 songs now. I'm going to mention these in chronological order as best I can. The first song on the list is Blowin' in the Wind. This was from his second album that came out in 1963. And this song is probably better known by its cover versions. Peter, Paul, and Mary had a hit with it not long after Bob Dylan released the song. A lot of artists have covered it. Sam Cooke covered it and commented that when he first heard it, he couldn't believe that a white man had written it because it kind of captures the essence of the civil rights movement. It's a protest song, which is what Bob Dylan kind of became associated with in the 60s. Beautiful song. Next is Don't Think Twice, It's Alright. This is kind of a sarcastic breakup song where the speaker kind of sounds like he's trying to be polite and sweet to the girl, but he's actually kind of being a little malicious. It shows Bob Dylan lyrically kind of at his witty best. And this song was also covered by Peter, Paul, and Mary, but I think in this particular case, Bob Dylan's version is better because Peter, Paul, and Mary's version sounds a little too polished, and the sarcasm that Dylan is intending to convey in this song, you lose a little bit of that when the vocals are really polished and smooth. Let's see. The next song would be Mr. Tambourine Man. This, I think, is Bob Dylan's best song. This is what hooked me as a Bob Dylan fan. The original version that Bob Dylan did had 4 verses. The Byrds trimmed it down to 1. Both versions are great. The Byrds version has great harmony. Roger McGuinn's great electric guitar. Bob Dylan's version is simpler in some ways, but it's just got this haunting quality about it, and the lyrics are just very beautiful. It's hard to know what the song's really about because the lyrics are difficult to decipher. But it, as all really good poetry does, it just evokes a lot of cool images, and it makes you feel very deeply. Let's see, number 4, Like a Rolling Stone. This is a song that, like I mentioned before, I heard as a kid and it made an impression on me, but when I later became a Bob Dylan fan, the song kind of grew on me, and I came to appreciate it. It's interesting to listen to it now. In 1965, when it came out, it was very unlike anything else on the radio, but you can hear kind of what would become Tom Petty's sound in this song. The song was, to use a cliche, way ahead of its time. Number 5, Just Like a Woman. I remember when I heard Bob Dylan play live in college, I remember thinking that this particular song sounded the best live. His band just nailed this song. This was a song the Byrds also covered. And it's hard to pick between which version is best, but it's a beautiful song. It has a really beautiful harmonica part. All right, number 6, One More Night. This was off the Nashville Skyline album that came out in 1969. This was when Bob Dylan was kind of exploring country music. His voice is really smooth on this particular song. This was not one of his better known songs, but it's a great song. Number 7, Girl from the North Country, with Johnny Cash. He had released this song in the early 1960s, but in 1969 he re-released it as a duet with Johnny Cash, and it's the second version that I think is the best. It's really cool to hear their vocals blend together. Let's see, number 8, Shelter from the Storm. This song came out in the mid-70s, and even though this has been quite a few years after Bob Dylan left behind his strictly acoustic live shows, this is an acoustic song, so it shows he never really truly lost touch with that acoustic side of things. Number 9, Most of the Time. This song came out in 1989. It was off the Oh Mercy album, and this is kind of a bittersweet, broken heart song. And again, showcases Bob Dylan's genius for the lyrics, because kind of the main refrain of the song is that he's, the speaker saying, "I'm getting over this broken heart, I'm okay now." But the lyrics betray the fact that he's not okay at all, even though he keeps trying to tell himself he's okay. Number 10, My Back Pages. Now this song originally came out in the 1960s, but the version that I'm listing here came out in 1992, and it was off the 30th anniversary concert album, celebrating the 30th anniversary of Bob Dylan's debut album. This 30th anniversary live version includes Bob Dylan, as well as Tom Petty, George Harrison, Eric Clapton, Neil Young, Roger McGuinn. It's just a really cool song. It's probably the best song from that 30th anniversary album. Number 11, Not Dark Yet. This song came out in 1997 and was off the album Time Out of Mind. Now, I mentioned a while ago, as a kid, I was familiar with Bob Dylan a little bit, and his voice always sounded like an old man. And that was true of him when he was young. And so in 97, when this album, Time Out of Mind, got a Grammy Award, I remember being surprised. I had no idea Bob Dylan was still alive. I just assumed that he had died because he just seemed so old in the 1960s. But this album was kind of his comeback album. It kind of marked a career resurgence. And of all the songs on this album, Not Dark Yet is definitely the best one. And then finally, number 12, Things Have Changed. This song came out in 2000. It was written for the soundtrack to the movie Wonder Boys, and it actually got the Academy Award for Best Original Song. This was the first and only time Bob Dylan's ever gotten an Academy Award for Best Original Song. What's interesting about Things Have Changed is that it has very much the feel of a Bob Dylan song, and yet it also sounds very contemporary. It sounds like a 2000 era song. So it shows Bob Dylan's ability to kind of continue to sound like his classic self while also adapting and being able to reflect the sensibilities of the time in which he's writing. Anyway, so that's a look at what I would consider to be the top 12 best songs written by Bob Dylan. If you've never given Bob Dylan a chance, I highly recommend that you do. His voice is not pretty. He has kind of a raw edge to his voice, but that's kind of the point. Like, a lot of times the songs he writes are meant to sound kind of raw, to convey a certain emotional punch, you know. So it's not that he's trying to sound like Bing Crosby and just epically failing. He's trying to sound like himself, and he does do that very well. It is true that a lot of the songs he's written sound better in the hands of other artists, because he is, you know, primarily a songwriter more than a singer. But his music is definitely worth checking out. If you don't consider yourself a Bob Dylan fan, I'm almost certain that you like some of his songs covered by other people. It's hard to imagine not liking anything he's done, because he's just done so much for so long. But anyway, check him out, check his greatest hits out, and go from there. Thank you for listening.